Hello and welcome back to Human Espresso, and today we are going to be reviewing the second episode of Doctor Who Flux, or second chapter, The War of the Sontarans. This is your warning before the titles play that we are going to be discussing this video in spoilers. So if you have not yet seen War of the Sontarans, it is available on BBC iPlayer. It is also available to stream on AMC Plus, I believe, as well, if you're in America. So yeah, let's get on with the video. So, right off the bat, we are given this sort of prophecy sequence, which is shown in black and white, which I thought was interesting. Sort of reminiscent of, obviously, 60s Who, which was obviously filmed in black and white. So I don't know if that's maybe a reference, because we obviously know this is all about pre-Harnell doctors. A lot of the stuff with The Timeless Child is about that. So I was wondering if maybe that is a subtle reference to that. We get this Harry's moving castle moment where Jodie looks around and sees a sort of kind of haunted house vibes. I'm surprised they didn't use this in last week's episode, although we did kind of have a haunted house moment towards the end of that. But here again, it looks very mysterious. I'm not sure quite what to expect from this. Could it be the Doctor's original home? I mean, this whole area, this woodland, does look like it was from that episode, The War of the Sontarans. So I was kind of like, is it gonna actually be explained later on in the episode? And it wasn't. So I wonder if we will be coming back to this. I mean, towards the end of the episode, Jodie said, 13 says that, what did she say? I hope I see you again to Mary Seacole. I mean, obviously people will just say that generally, but maybe it is subtly hinting that Mary Seacole might return, and therefore might return to this location later in the series. I don't know. It's interesting. I just thought it's an interesting foreshadowing thing, so I'm interested to see what comes of it. Although my first thought was, it looks like Harry's moving castle. But yeah, so that, no, it's not Harry's, it's Howell's, sorry. Never mind. But yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is the resolution of last week's cliffhanger. I liked last week's cliffhanger. Actually, that was the thing I found myself consistently rewatching over the week. I mean, they uploaded the clip to YouTube and it was on Twitter and everything. So I watched it a few times and I really loved that cliffhanger. I mean, I thought it was a bit meh when I first watched it, but the more I watched it, the more I liked it. I loved the cuts between each character, but then they kind of just pick up here and they've sort of just been chilling on the ground. They've just been transported to this place and never really gets brought up again. So I don't know if there is going to be an explanation for this. I would have had it in this episode if there was going to be an explanation, which makes me think there won't be one. But I just kind of thought it was a bit disappointing the way they just picked up like nothing had happened, really. So yeah, it was an interesting choice. But yeah, it was a bit odd. And then of course we get introduced to is Sarah Powell as Mary Seacole. And that's the one thing that's been consistent throughout the Chibnall era, is the handling of historicals. And I think the historical aspect of the Crimean War of this episode, and of course Mary Seacole, is handled really well. I think Mary Seacole and Sarah Powell is the strongest aspect of this episode. She really interacts with the Doctor as like a companion. And I think we haven't really had a proper historical figure do that since the RTD era, where those celebrity historicals would kind of be a pseudo-companion. That's kind of what's happened here. And what I loved Rosa, she was very much there to do what Rosa does in history, and nothing else really. So it was nice to have a sort of engagement from that character in the story. Whereas I feel like, particularly again in the Moffat era, they didn't really translate as a companion. They just sort of, the historical figures were just sort of there doing their thing. So it's nice to have that interaction. And I think she really bounced off Jodie well. She had some great lines, such as like when she was in the Sontaran ship and Dan appeared and she's like, I have no idea what's going on. I just thought it was so relatable, because honestly, who would have any idea what was going on in that situation? And I love that she was still tending to the Sontaran, even though the Sontaran was an enemy. I talk of which, the Sontarans were great in this episode. We'll get to them next, but Sarah Powell was really great in this episode. I think she made a nice sort of one-off companion. And if that theory I had about her coming back is true, I'd love to see that, because she was really great. Make her a companion. Do it. We need a historical companion. Everyone's been calling for it for years, so let's hope it happens. Next, we obviously have to talk about the Sontarans. Now, this is the thing, I do kind of feel like the Sontaran plot throughout this episode was a little weak, in the sense that they just sort of popped up and were fighting. And I mean, that's kind of all you can do with the Sontarans. I felt like their actual plot was maybe a bit lacking in places, but I still thought it pulled through. I think the actual performance from the Sontarans and the writing, like, of their dialogue and stuff was actually very good. I really loved how they balanced the comedy aspects of the Sontarans and the more serious ones. And I noticed last week everyone was saying, oh, they're just taking the Sontarans as a joke again. But actually, no, I think they are being quite serious with them this time, as well as having that comedy. Which, I mean, this is the thing, like, everyone was saying, oh, we need a proper serious Sontaran story. But, like, have the Sontarans ever been serious? I mean, I know a lot of people use this example as, obviously, like, Lynx just walks out his pod and puts, like, a flagpole on the earth and claims it as his own. So, I mean, it's the kind of, like, they've always been humorous. So I don't know why everyone's saying all of a sudden we need a serious Sontaran story, because they haven't always been serious. So I think this gets the balance of that serious aspect that a lot of people crave, and their more comedic aspects. I mean, there's a great line about the Sontaran wanting to ride a horse. I just couldn't. And it was over. I just laughed so hard at that point. It was amazing. And the comedy throughout this series has actually been really great. I mean, I didn't really see Chris Chibnall as a comedic writer, but actually after these episodes, these last two ones, I've been giggling throughout. I mean, particularly with the walk and Dan's line about, I'm going to walk right out of here later on as well. So the comedy throughout this series so far has been really great. I think it's been really strong, and there's been some really great dialogue throughout, actually. I mean, a lot of people criticise Chibnall's dialogue as being, like, too, like, I don't know how to describe it. Everyone's just, like, states, right, show, don't tell, except he tells, don't show, something like that. But actually I thought it was quite well balanced, the dialogue this time. So yeah, the Sontarans were great. I loved seeing Dan Starkey back as a Sontaran. He's always great as a Sontaran. I remember when he first popped up, I was like, it's Strax, he's back. It's obviously not Strax, but it feels like it's Strax. It's the same personality, to right down to the point that he gets disgraced. I was half expecting them to say, oh, this could be Strax's origin story or something, and he gets turned into a nurse. No, he gets killed instead, which is kind of sad. I mean, Strax voices multiple Sontarans, or Dan Starkey voices multiple Sontarans in the story, which helps that sort of clone aspect, which is interesting. I mean, they are probably the most clone-like that we've had because of that, and I mean, we only see two with their helmets off, so that kind of helps as well. But yeah, Sontarans were a great presence throughout. I just felt like their actual presence in the story, and their defeat, actually. I mean, I do kind of think the defeat was a bit simple, to be honest. I mean, they just sort of got a massive ramming thing and sort of rammed into them. But, I mean, it was still fun. Like, I love Carvanista coming onto the ship with Dan and just sort of taking over. I love Carvanista. I think he's the highlight of this series so far. He hasn't got much of a presence in this episode, but he is, like, really strong throughout the episode, in the screen time he does have. I know he's in the next one because he's on the cast list, but I'm really excited for him. I hope he comes back as, like, a recurring character across the series, because he is really great. So yeah, the Sontarans, that's about all I can say about them. But yeah, again, overall, great humour, great dialogue, great writing of their actual characters. Just maybe, I mean, their just plan wasn't as interesting as other Sontaran plans have been. They're still a great presence, don't get me wrong. I just thought they could have maybe done more with it, but they're not really the main plotline, the Flux is, so I kind of understand that. So I'll say that. It could have been better, but also I understand why it was how it was. Okay, so let's now talk about the third subplot. We kind of touched on the two Sontaran plots, which were quite nicely intertwined, I'll say that before we get onto this next plot. But the next plot line is obviously Yaz meeting Vinder at the Temple of Atropos, which it was intriguing. I think consistently Sam Spurrell as Swarm has been the most enigmatic villain of the Chris Chibnall era so far, and it's actually the thing where most of my attention is. When he walks on screen, he kind of steals the scene for me. I think he's so great. He's so intense and sort of, he gives me very master-like vibes. I know a lot of people say, oh, he's the master in, like, from, like, Decayed Master. I don't think so. I would be kind of disappointed if he didn't. What I'm saying, by saying he's like the master, I'm meaning, like, he's, like, the master in quality as a villain, which is why I think he's just sort of, like, nice chilling, but also, like, chilling in, like, a creepy way, but also chilling in just, like, a casual way in some places where he's, like, leaning against the pillars in the temple, which I thought was so funny. But also, Azura is quite creepy as well. She's quite sinister. She hasn't really done much, but what she does do is quite sinister. Like, the way she's, like, dissolving this sort of guide type thing, light thing, which that's the other thing, those guide light ring things made me think of the Armageddon Factor, and this sort of, the judges and the prosecutor, I think, from that episode with the Ogre. They reminded me of that, not only because they were just, like, blinking out and, like, blinking like little lampposts, the tops of lampposts, which kind of, I guess, ties into the sort of Joseph Williamson thing, because he's from around that era when you would have those lampposts sort of filled with light and sort of fire, I guess. So it's nice that was sort of maybe a subtle hint. I'm curious to see how this links into the stuff with Joseph Williamson. That hasn't really been a key focus yet, so I'm wondering how that fits in, because he's talking about the tunnels when he approaches Yaz. So I'm curious to see how that fits in with the main narrative, because again, that plot line is kind of glossed over, so I'm kind of waiting for them to bring that up again. So we'll see what that becomes of that. So we get these taken to this sort of Mori thing, which I thought was interesting. Part of me thought maybe they were the Doctor's species, but I don't know what's going to happen. I think maybe when Swarm snaps his finger, that's the cliffhanger. Maybe that unleashes this sort of alternate timeline, which is what I was getting from the Next Time trailer. So I'm not quite sure what the Mori are, other than that they sort of keeping time in place. Which, I mean, the comparisons to Loki and Doctor Who are ever growing at this point. I don't know if they did watch Loki, and I don't know if that would have edited that, because it was still quite recent, but they were filming Doctor Who when it happened, so but I mean, so they kind of reminded me of the Guardians, the people that were at the top, the supposed people at the top of the TVA. They reminded me of that. They're keeping the timelines in order. Obviously, they get damaged by the flux. So I'm curious to see what these Mori are. It's kind of adding more to the lore of Doctor Who and the universe, which I thought was interesting, on this planet called Time, which I thought is quite mysterious. And then my immediate thought was, clearly this has got to be the Doctor's original planet. It's just kind of like, if that's where the Time Lords spawned from, you'd think that it would come from some kind of planet like called Time. So yeah, the Mori were interesting. I thought it was quite sinister seeing their makeup on, like, Yaz and Vinder at the end of the episode as well. Talking of which, Jacob Anderson as Vinda. Now, let's talk about this character. We haven't really seen enough of him yet. I don't think he hasn't even really properly met the Doctor yet. But he's been in every episode so far, and I can kind of assume that he will be in every episode to come. So he's been an interesting character. I think he's still, like, he's got this sort of, he hasn't really got that Han Solo vibe anymore, but he's got this, and I know someone pointed out on Twitter, this Zachary Cross Flame vibe, and this sort of Torchwood type agent, and they talk about him being sort of I can't, disgraced or something, like he's been, because obviously he's on Outpost Rose as if it's like a punishment. He mentions it sort of like the go to hell type thing, kind of, again, links to the Zachary Cross Flame thing that a lot of people have been pointing out. And right down to the sort of tone of voice. The voice kind of gives me that vibe. And of course, the actual kind of set design. We don't talk about set design that much here, but the direction and the set design of the ship, the outpost he was in last time, had that sort of rusty, worn down vibe that we got in The Impossible Planet. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was true. But it was quite interesting, and I mean, a lot of people have picked up on that theory, so you never know. I mean, we'll see. He's a good character though throughout, and I think his interaction with Yaz were good. Talking of Yaz, she was really strong in this episode as well. We'll get to Yaz now. So Yaz is continuing the storyline of becoming the Doctor, and we all know this is not going to end well for her character, which means she's probably going to die. Let's hope she doesn't, because someone pointed out that they uploaded a video about the best moments for Yaz, and that there's barely any moments where Yaz is the main focus. I think it was stupid to release that video before this series, because she's had so many great moments in this series. Like, already, like, taking command of the situation with that sort of flashy light thing. I thought she's really emanating this Doctor vibe, and the fact that she'd be able to grow now that, I think particularly the gap. We've seen a lot of that development sort of just happen between these episodes, but it has happened across a gap, which I think helps, because we have to skip that, really, because we've only got 6 episodes. But she really takes command of the situation. I think Thorm is going to manipulate her love for the Doctor. I'm saying love because Thasmin is definitely happening, alright? We're going with Thasmin. Let's have it already now. But yeah. So I think Swarm is going to manipulate, and maybe the Doctor's love for her as well at the end. Like, there's a moment where he's going to snap, and then he's like, the Doctor's saying, what do you want? I'll do anything. And I was like, you can really feel the Phasmin energy radiating in that scene. I just wish they'd just have Phasmin happen already. Come on now, let's go. But yeah, Yaz is really strong in this episode. Like, each week she's getting better and better. I really can't wait to see what happens next week, particularly with that end credits scene where they're all facing the city. And obviously there's a bit where she's in a police car, and I'm wondering if we could get flashbacks to, like, Woman of Fell to Earth. Is this going to be Chris Chibnall's, like, turn left? I'm hyped. So yeah, let's wrap up my overall thoughts on this episode. So, overall, this has been a strong episode from a lot of standpoints, but I do feel like I was reflecting on what I said earlier about the plot with the Sontarans. I kind of feel like actually it was more dragged out than actually being a bad plot now, reflecting on it. And that actually, if they cut it a bit shorter and had more of the Temple of the Atropos stuff, that might have been better. But again, it's a bit nitpicky, but I just felt like the bit with the Sontarans was starting to drag towards the end, whereas I was more invested in the stuff on Atropos. Which obviously looks like it's going to be the main focus of next week's episode, and all is forgiven because I'm really looking forward to next week's episode based on that next time trailer. Something I didn't mention, the comedy obviously throughout with Dan's parents. I can't believe I didn't mention them. They were great. I hope we get to see them again. The walk, all Dan's lines. I really can't wait for Dan to read. Obviously he did, never mind. And Jodie really has some great moments here as well, when she's confronting the Sontaran, and obviously the way she talks to the General at the end, saying, people like you make me wonder why I care so much about humanity. That gave me chills, that line. Gave me chills, like Jodie's best performance by far. I will say that. And this series is really shaping up to be really strong. A series, like, with these 2 episodes alone, like, and it seems so weird that we're almost going to be halfway through the series next year. I do feel like Chris Chibnall, while he's not cracked the perfect Doctor Who formula, I think he has cracked his perfect Doctor Who formula. This is the way I think he should have done his era from the start at this point. And I kind of think that maybe he probably did want to do it this way, because this is the way that Broadchurch was structured, and I think that would be playing to his strengths. But, I mean, you can't change the past. At least they're getting it now. And, I mean, this is kind of the last chance we'll have with him, which is a bit sad, because, obviously, we might not get more Doctor Who like this. But I do think this was a really strong approach to take, at least from the first 2 episodes. So, yeah, overall, I'm going to rate it slightly lower than last week's, but not by much. I gave it 8.5. I'm just going to give this one an 8. So, again, it's shaping up to be quite a strong series, like, overall, very consistent, in my opinion, at least. So, yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, or give me your feedback on this episode. Tell me what you thought of the War of the Sontarans, and are you looking forward to next week in Once Upon Time? So, thanks for watching, and goodbye.